Good Friday, getting ready for the weekend. So I'm gonna start with another meditation because one, it will help us all prevent dementia. Yay, no one wants to have a dementia brain. So let's just sit back, cross your legs, man across. You could do your eyes open and just kind of gaze out and just go ahead and take a deep breath in and let it out. Just feel anywhere where you have tension in the body. Is it the head, the neck, the chest, the shoulders, the belly, the hips, the legs, the feet? Just kind of do a mental scan all the way down. And take another deep breath in and let it out. And if you have any place where you feel tight, just let it melt away. Keep taking some deep breaths. Do you have thoughts coming through your head? Just let them wander away. Just kind of recognize them and watch them go past. Now, when you take your next deep breath, make sure you fill up all of the lungs. Hold it for a couple seconds and then let it out. Feel grounded, feel how heavy your butt is in the chair or how heavy your feet are if you're standing up. And take a final last deep breath. And let all the stress from the week wash away. All right. See, meditation in a minute. It works. All right, so let's start talking about hormones. I'm kind of give a crash course on hormones, how it affects your immune system, and the correlation with autoimmune disease. So I think this is a fascinating topic. So let's first start with estrogen. So estrogen is, and when it comes to the immune system, actually is an activator of the immune system. It actually upregulates your immune response. And it tends to promote Th1 dominance. And for a reminder of the different generalities of the immune system, we have the arm, we call it Th1, Th2, and then Th3, which is also known as your 17 regulatory pathway. So Th1 is going to be part of the immune system that tends to be more autoimmune promoting. Th2 is the immune system that tends to be more allergy promoting, just how you respond to bacteria. And then the Th17 regulatory is kind of more of your balance, but there's actually some evidence showing now a couple autoimmune disease might be actually more Th17 driven. But generality, I think Th1 more autoimmune, Th2 I think more allergies. So estrogen is going to promote more the Th1 pathway, which is more your autoimmune pathway. So higher estrogen states, higher risk of getting autoimmune disease. The estrogens also help prevent the B cells from breaking down, which the B cells are producing your antibodies. So you're going to have higher antibody loads with higher estrogen. And so some statistics to kind of help bring this into perspective. Rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune driven, it's 2 to 3 times more dominant in females than men. That's pretty high. And lupus has increased risk with birth control and hormone replacement therapy. Now, birth control is going to be your synthetic estrogens. Those tend to be much more stimulatory for side effects and concerns than bioidentical estrogens. And there's also certain estrogens are going to be more immunostimulatory than others. So you have your 3 main estrogens, E1, E2, and E3. E1 is the most potent estrogen. Then there's E2, which is a step down in the potency. And then there's E3, which is the least potent. E3 is actually the less immune stimulating out of the estrogens, out of those top estrogens. And then your body creates metabolites out of that to get the estrogen out. And it either goes into a 4 pathway or usually a 16. and we try and promote the estrogens more to the weaker metabolites, because those are going to have less estrogen stimulatory effects on breast tissue, uterus tissue, just the overall body. But the 16 alpha pathway is going to be your more estrogen activating pathway, and that is also going to be more inflammatory. If your estrogen is going into the 16 alpha, you're going to have, it's an indication of more inflammatory states. So we can get a lot of this estrogen information through the Dutch urine test, and I think almost probably most of you have run that one on. And it's a urine test. So takeaway, estrogen is immune stimulatory. Now let's talk about progesterone. Progesterone is actually, it down-regulates the immune system. So it actually promotes Th2 dominance, whereas estrogen promoted Th1 dominance. Now, the key here is you want, your immune system has receptors for both estrogen and progesterone. And so it's about a balance of the estrogen and progesterone, because you need both. You don't want to be just progesterone, because then your immune system is too down-regulated and it can't respond to stuff. But you don't want to be all estrogen, because then you're just immunostimulatory the whole time. So like everything in our body, it's about balance and having that balance between the estrogen and progesterone. And symptomatically, I see that all the time, whether it's perimenopause, if you're having PMS, breast tenderness, having more of the menstrual, the hormonal symptoms, it all comes down to balance. It doesn't matter if your hormones are high or low, it's about the ratios of those that actually end up creating a lot of symptoms for ladies. And you can always take one of those hormones too far if it's out of balance with the other one. So for example, almost I would say majority of PMS is actually estrogen driven. It's an estrogen dominant state. But when it comes to balancing hormones, if we drive too much of the progesterone pathway, then we actually start to have our own whole new bucket of symptoms. Because again, we took progesterone out of balance. We OD'd the progesterone, and now we're progesterone dominant as opposed to estrogen dominant. So this is all about balancing the hormones. It's useful to know where your hormones are, because that can help us know what hormone we want to try and promote to balance. But you can think of the hormones like a bell curve. You don't want to overshoot the peak of the bell curve, because otherwise you actually start to get new symptoms. Yay. Now let's talk about a little bit about the basal body temperature. So basal body temperature is your temperature of your body. You can take it when you wake up in the morning, and you want to do it before you actually sit up, because sitting up will actually raise your basal body temperature, your BBT. And you can really do it anyway, armpit, mouth. You just need a thermometer by your bedside stand. Most people who are tracking BBT are trying to get pregnant, but you can actually still track it for just to kind of check on your overall metabolism of your body and to see cycles and patterns. So estradiol specifically, so that's E2, and we make probably majority of estrogens are going to be more E2 when we're in the full production of it. E2 lowers your basal body temperature. So your hormones are going to be thermoregulators. So estrogen is lowering your overall temperature. So what happens when you hit menopause? Your estrogen levels drop and you start getting hot flashes because you don't have enough estrogen to lower that overall temperature. Now, the flip side is progesterone. Progesterone actually increases your basal body temperature. So when you're pregnant and you have all these high, and your progesterone is going through the roof, this is why pregnant ladies get hot, because they have more progesterone. And so you can see, again, it's not just about one hormone, it's about the balance of the two. So it's about the balance between the estrogen and the progesterone to thermoregulate yourself. So I think this is a big reason. Well, I know it is a big reason why a lot of menopausal women will experience more hot flashes when they have done too much exercise. They've been under stress. They've pushed their adrenals too far, because whatever little amount of hormones they have left, they'll tend to pull out of their sex hormones for whatever little is left, creating more of that hot flash. Testosterone, this is testosterone and DHEA. This is why men are lucky when it comes to autoimmune disease. So testosterone downregulates the immune system. So it actually this actually promotes the T regulatory cells. And DHEA actually suppresses, we know that it suppresses the dsDNA antibodies, which are you can think of it like your lupus antibodies. So we know that DHEA is downregulating that immune system as well, and it is autoimmune protective. So this is why, or second reason why men are going to see overall less rates of autoimmune disease than females. But then if you also tend to think, just a whole nother side tangent, is adrenals and adrenal fatigue. So the adrenals are also the same enzyme that produces cortisol, produces DHEA. And what we see commonly is if you've been your adrenals have been under too much stress or strain, whether it's mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress, then the DHEA starts to drop faster than normal. Now, DHEA is your hormone of youth, and so that will drop as you age. It's just a factor of aging as you get a reduction in your DHEA. But if you've been stressed out for too long in your life without periods of rest, then your DHEA drops faster than normal. And think about it. Remember, DHEA is downregulating the immune system. So if you're in adrenal fatigue state and you have really low DHEA, that's going to increase your risk for autoimmune disease. We already know that autoimmune disease loves to get triggered and reactivated and propagated with stress. So you add the stress piece, and then you add on top of it the layer of not having enough DHEA. Now let's talk about cortisol, kind of the other flip side to the adrenals. So cortisol is a big time down regulator of the immune system. This is where steroids are mimicking. And so cortisol is going to inhibit the TMB lymphocytes in the immune system. It's going to stabilize cell membranes, and it's going to reduce the migration of white blood cells to inflamed areas. So what does that mean? It means you're going to get less inflamed when you cut yourself, or less inflamed with increased cortisol when you blow your knee out, which is why steroids are such a potent immune modulator and helping to reduce the swelling and the pain. Cortisol is one of the biggest downregulators in the immune system, which is why steroids are kind of amazing at what they do. It's just we have issues with the long-term effects. So how does all this relate to autoimmune disease? So let's talk about how autoimmune disease is activated. So you have to have the genetic predisposition. So you have a gene and it got mutated. Then you have to have the environmental trigger. So you have to have the perfect soup to activate the gene. So meaning you have to look at diet, lifestyle, toxins, gut flora, infections, hormones, stressors, literally the entire picture, nutrient depletions, because nutrients of course will affect the immune system. And so all the time, I get this question all the time with, well, how come I didn't get my autoimmune disease activated until now? And it's usually in the 30s. And that's when that perfect soup hits. Now, sometimes we'll get that perfect soup to hit earlier, or we'll get that perfect soup to hit later. This is also why I see a lot of autoimmune disease activated postpartum, because the pregnancy and the postpartum phase are just stressors and strains on the body. And if the body didn't receive enough nourishment and reset back, then it's just making that environmental triggering soup even more susceptible or potent for the genes. And pinging back to the gut here, as you all know how I love to ping back to the gut, is so anytime you have dysbiosis, or meaning unhealthy changes to the gut flora, that we know will increase local inflammation in the gut, and the changes in the flora plus the inflammation actually create poor estradiol elimination. So what does this mean? You get more recirculation of your estrogens because you're actually reabsorbing them, recirculating them, and not just pooping them out. We want you to be pooping them out. And so if you're recirculating more estrogen, it increases your risk for activating more autoimmune disease because now your estrogen levels have gone up. Now, remember, not everyone is going to get an autoimmune disease. You have to have the genetics for it, plus the perfect soup. So that's why not everyone who has high estrogen gets an autoimmune disease. And then let's talk briefly about synthetic hormones and hormone replacement therapy. This in itself could be its own huge thing. So I was just going to talk about some, I don't know, pertinent facts, updates. So progestin, which is in a lot of birth controls, it's what's coating the Mirena IUD. And there's also even progestin only birth controls. And it's also sometimes used as it's the synthetic progesterone. The issue here is it actually increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, strokes, pulmonary embolism, and the alternative, the better form, is just going to be a micronized progesterone. That's your bioavailable form. And the micronized progesterone, this bioavailable form is going to be protective for the uterus. And we actually see that it lowers the risk for the cardiovascular disease, the strokes, the pulmonary embolism. So it's exactly the opposite of the progestin. And then from a dosing standpoint, which actually was, I don't know, I figured this out a couple years ago, but topical progesterone actually delivers way more potent than oral progesterone, which is kind of nice because then it's less of a pill you have to pop. When it comes to hormone replacement therapy, this again could be its own lecture. So most of the time, well, fortunately, I should say actually that doctors are using the bioidenticals more often now because there's been enough research coming out about the synthetic hormones increasing that stroke, pulmonary embolism, cardiovascular disease. But even with that, you're still going to have some issues. The main concerns here, even if it's a bioidentical estrogen, it's estrogen. What does estrogen do? You're adding a hormone into the body. So if you have any risk for hormone-driven cancer, breast cancer, now you're upping that risk. And of course, you're upping the risk for activating autoimmune disease. Most of the time though, if you're 50 and 60 and you're looking at hormone replacement therapy, I would think your autoimmune disease would be activated by then, but it's still a risk. So that was a kind of a little bit of a crash course in how hormones are affecting the immune system and how they balance each other for either activating autoimmunity or protecting autoimmunity, and how women are going to have a higher percentage risk than men. Questions? I'll just talk briefly about pregnancy, because pregnancy, your immune system is doing a flip-flop. We know that your immune system will become more Th2 dominant and actually suppress Th1 is one of the reasons for that is that it reduces your risk of miscarriage. But also you're going to be having the higher progesterone levels, estrogen as well, the higher progesterone levels, which are going to be immune balancing. And then at the point of delivery, your immune system literally flops to Th1. Okay, great question. Question is, how do you treat hormonal imbalance naturally without bioidentical hormone replacement therapy? So there are hormone herbs that you can give. They help to more or less mitigate the side effects of menopause, perimenopause. And so some will be phytoestrogens, meaning that they have components that actually mimic estrogen and they'll bind to the estrogen receptor, but they're a much weaker form than your own natural estrogen. So soy is a perfect example of that. So there's certain herbs that will be more progesterone promoting or have progesterone mimicking qualities, like yam. Wild yam is a big one. And then there will also be herbs that will be more vasoconstricting, so it'll help with more of the hot flash. So sage, I love for that. Black cohosh, I love for that. So you can do a blended of the herbs. And then second point is you got to reduce inflammation, because inflammation is going to be basically irritating the pathways. And if you have higher inflammation, you could be having more hot flashes, more symptomatic. And the big thing comes down to adrenals and interplay between adrenals and thyroid, but more so adrenals, because the adrenals and whatever little bit of sex hormones you do have, they're all kind of in the same pathway. So all different types of adrenal support are going to help that. Now, if you're also trying to balance your hormones and you're not in perimenopause yet, you're still having your cycle, that there are herbs that you can, again, use to kind of balance those. We usually want to throw in like a liver support, kidney support, because we want to help get your estrogens out of the body, improve the gut flora, pretty much in all ladies, any phase of life, because of how the gut flora actually is highly affecting your ability to recirculate estrogens versus getting them out. And of course, going back and doing the whole endocrine cycle of balancing the adrenals, the thyroid, stress, ovary function, all of that. So I always love starting with the herbs, especially with the perimenopause, menopause, because we can kind of blend the adrenal and whatever estrogen or progesterone promoting herb we want in with that. And then I have done BHRT for quite a few ladies because of the positive benefits of it actually increasing bone density. So it is actually a verified treatment for osteoporosis, because estrogen will build bone. That's where you're just balancing the pros and the cons, and are there enough pros to balance out the possible side effects of taking the estrogen. So can be a very effective technique doing BHRT. It's just not completely, it just still has side effects. And some ladies I've found, they have found that the homeopathy or the diet changes or the herbs or everything else that we do haven't been enough. And then the goal with HRT is that we just do the lowest dose possible, and with a whole ton of liver support at the same time. In my opinion, anyone who does HRT needs to be on liver support to help the liver metabolize out the estrogens that they're getting. But then again, you still need to make sure it's that whole body mindset of fix the gut, fix everything. Because that will actually improve all of your hormone pathways and allow your hormones to start to balance, because the hormones are a very downstream system, in my opinion, because they're so highly affected by adrenals, by thyroid, by your diet, by your gut. And so there's definitely a time and place to go in and treat the hormones directly. Because sometimes you need that lifeline, you need that progesterone, you need that estrogen, or you need the herbs that are going to kind of mimic those hormones, or the homeopathy that's going to help you with that. But you're always most likely going to be on that cycle of needing that stuff until you go back and treat the gut, adrenals, thyroid, that kind of whole endocrine axis, clean up the diet. And everyone responds differently. Some ladies have found that undas and homeopathy have been enough, and that's completely fixed their hormonal imbalance. Other ladies have needed more of the herbs. Other ladies have found just cleaning up the diet and resetting the diet was it. So that's kind of where everyone is going to have their own treatment, and everyone's going to respond to something different. If you have any other questions, I'll keep thinking of other fun points. So also still speaking on that point of, okay, so how do you fix hormone balances naturally? The seed cycling and oil cycling, I love. which I tend to find if you're in perimenopause, still having your cycles can be effective. Now, I've actually never tried that with a menopausal lady. I usually just give you guys the evening primrose oil to help with a lot of the menopausal symptoms. But that's actually cycling seeds based upon where you are in your menstrual cycle. And that actually, the seeds have the essential oils in it, the essential fatty acids that actually help to nourish the follicular and the luteal phase of the cycle. Nuts and cruciferous veggies are going to be promoting progesterone. So you could be eating those for your progesterone. And let me see. I was looking at fun notes. Of course, if you want to promote your cortisol, it's kind of more about balancing the adrenals. Some of my favorite herbs are the ashwagandha, because that will, it's a calming adrenal balancer, and it also promotes GABA, which is the anti-anxiety amino acid in the body. It actually helps promote thyroid conversion, so it's kind of like a whole endocrine axis adaptogen. Maca is also really good as well. It's a pretty potent, maca is ginseng. It's one of the forms of ginseng, and it's one of the strongest forms. So I have had ladies say that maca was the key. It changed their life forever. And other ladies who never even, maca did nothing for. So again, it's just kind of fitting the right herb with the right person. But those are some of the bigger herbs that will address the whole endocrine axis: adrenals, thyroid, sex hormones, ovaries. And good fats. Don't forget about your good fats. All of your hormones are made out of good fats. So, which is why the low-fat diet of the 80s was the worst thing we could have done in medicine ever. Everything is made out of good fats. We need it for healthy cholesterol. We need it for heart. We need it for our brain. Our brain is made out of fat. We need it to make sex hormones. We need it to make neurotransmitters are kind of more amino acids, but we need it for a ton of stuff. Good fats. I'm trying to make my kids eat avocado toast. All right. Any other questions? Heard that avocados are not good for you now. Can you give me some more details on that? Probably depends more on your blood type. Certain blood types will be able to handle avocado as well, versus other blood types. I don't think I've ever seen an allergy to an avocado. But that's also where it kind of goes down to more intuitive eating. Not everyone's going to have the same diet that the next person over is going to have, because their body will assimilate nutrients and need a different blend of nutrients. Ideally, I'll want to get everyone to the point where we're all doing intuitive eating, because you're the ones in your bodies, I'm not in your body. Goal is that you guys educate enough on nutrition where you can do your own balanced eating, and avocados make me feel this way, great, I can eat them. Or nope, I don't feel good with avocados, I'm not going to eat them. And it's the more and more nutrition I do, I just go back to macro balancing and just making sure we don't cut out. We want all the food groups, just different portions for different people, and also different portions based upon activity level and exercise level. I know that, as your exercise increases, you need more of those starchy carbs. You need more of the fibrous carbs. And so it's balance. Balance is the key.